I want to share some headlines with you. Senator Fetterman, John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, he's scheduled to spend weeks in the hospital for depression treatment and has no plans to resign. Meanwhile, the White House doctor claims that Joe Biden, the president, is fit to serve despite performing 0 cognitive tests. So I don't know how reliable these assessments are anymore, but we're going to continue to look at things. And one of the things I want to look at is anxiety and anxiety disorders and how they're affecting people. Something like 20% of Americans are currently affected by anxiety. And there was a term that I read that I thought was fascinating, that women in their 20s are facing something called a quarter-life crisis. And I said, I don't know what that is, and we need an expert to explain it to us. So our expert is Teresa Lusk. You can get her at TeresaLuskShow.com. She's the author of 4 books, including Girl Preach. Teresa Lusk, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Rich. It's a pleasure to be on with you tonight.
Likewise, thank you for joining me. I want to dig right into this, and it seems like you are in the know on what's going on with all of these facts and figures and the issues surrounding anxiety and all of this and how it's affecting women, in particular in their 20s. I happen to have one. I have a daughter that's 21, so I found this particularly interesting. Tell us more.
Rich, you are correct. So women seem to be the ones who are being diagnosed with a lot of anxiety and depression, things of that nature. I heard you say 20%. I was reading it was about 23.4% of females.
Yeah, even higher.
Versus 14% of males. And this is, of course, in women around their 20s. And it's not surprising, though, Rich. You know, there's so much going on. I just think that there's many different factors that contribute to that. We can say, you know, first of all, life change. You know, when you're a female and you're in your early 20s, there's a lot of life changes going on. And we don't even realize the pressure that goes on. I mean, I think we do in general, but when you break it down individual by individual, there's so many decisions that young females are having to make. They're thinking about work. You know, usually about that age, you're having to be a little more independent. So now you're thinking about, okay, I've got to be able to keep this job because it pays my rent. I'm now committed to an apartment. I'm committed to a roommate, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of the things. The other thing is relationships, balancing relationships. You know, we don't think about that, but when you go from high school to now you're a young adult, you're going to college. Now there's a whole new set of relationships that you're having to form, and that can be very stressful on women at young 20s.
Now,
other things?
These things make sense. I just want to clarify here, though. None of that's new, though, right? I mean, for forever, we've always had, whether men or women, right? They've always had bills that they've had to pay as they're coming of age, and relationships that they have to maintain, whether they're professional or engaging in a new relationship. You know, meeting the man or woman of their dreams. Why do you think, in particular, and in particular now, this is affecting women so much? Young women in particular.
Sure. You know, I think it's pressure. It's how someone processes life. You know, I'm in my 40s, and I see the difference between my generation and the younger generations. We had it more. It was sink or swim. You know, for our. It seems like, you know, you just did it. Yes, it was hard. I think that there's just a little bit different, even in how we have. The parents have raised the children of the 20-year-olds, and you know, I think we have maybe enabled them a little bit more, and I know that's hard to hear sometimes, but that's the reality.
That would make a lot more sense, though, because you know it's not like they're dealing with newer problems; they're dealing with the problems we all went through, but it seems like it's hitting them that much harder.
Correct. Yes, and you know. I've been doing some research and interviews as well for girls or around the teenage age, having to do with social media. I think even that can play a part. There's a lot of different
huge part.
things that are now, like technology. So yes, we have had the same responsibilities all along, but I think there's different things that are contributing, starting with how have we parented. I think that, we maybe protected them a lot more. I can see it in my own parenting. I see it in people close to me. I see it in general. We parent differently. So that has shifted a lot of the way we think, even if you think about the education system, how we shelter the kids from a lot more things, yet they're somehow accessing a lot more unhealthy things.
Yes.
So can we fully pin it down? I don't know, Rich. Those are just my professional opinions.
Sure. And I just want to say, and the reason I'm curious about it is because a couple of days ago, maybe 3 or 4 days ago, I read this NBC News piece that I thought was very just super telling. And the headline was that the CDC has a new report, and they're saying that teen girls in particular were caught in this wave of sadness and violence, and that they were experiencing suicidal thoughts and an unprecedented level of hopelessness that they hadn't seen in something like 10 years, and it was up like 24%. So then I see what we're talking about now, where you're saying that girls tend to suffer from anxiety at a higher level. And I'm thinking something's changing somewhere, whether it's parenting, whether it's social media, whether something somewhere is causing this, because the life itself may change somewhat, but it seems like there are external influences that may be more, and they're more targeted at girls.
Absolutely. Well, I will tell you, I actually read that study, and I've been able to speak on that. I really believe that social media, I believe, affects females and males differently. When you look at social media, and you start watching reels, women are bombarded with how can you make your body look better, and this has been going on forever. The difference now is, though, that you are constantly bombarded with it. When I was in my 20s, we didn't have access to the videos we have now. Every other video that I watch, like if I scroll through my Instagram in the evening and whatever, the videos that are constantly popping up are of women who have gone through a serious amount of surgery to make a tiny waist, a huge bottom,
Right.
And
it's not real.
Is mounting. Right. It's not real. But women, we have this crazy, unhealthy, unless you've dealt with your mind and your soul, et cetera, to be accepted, to look great, to feel good. And so when you're constantly flipping from one video to the next, and these girls have gone, and I'm not even picking on them, but the truth is, I don't even know what percentage of these women, what you're seeing, it's not real. But it does make you go, oh, this is not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing good enough. Whatever I'm trying to do to make myself feel better, if I'm eating healthier, if I'm going to the gym, I'm still not going to meet that image that's being fed to me over and again, because there was surgery involved in that.
Oh, so a whole bunch of it.
Study, you take the study that you were mentioning about the young girls, it's tied to the social media aspect of it, which, by the way, it does not discriminate the women in their 20s, and it does not discriminate older women either. And by the way, I don't even think it's only to females. I think it happens to males as well, but females, even makeup videos, if you think about it, every other video out there is how to contour your face and make yourself look completely different than who you are. That's the message we get.
That's true. I've never really watched one of those for myself. So, yeah, I could see how that affects girls in a different way. Let me just remind everybody that we're on with Teresa Lusk. Check out her website at teresaluskshow.com. That's Teresa, Teresa, Lusk, Lusk, show.com. And we're going to continue this conversation with her, and I think it's a fascinating one. And we're also going to talk about what the quarter-life crisis is, and what's going on with Gen Z workers and why they're having so many mental health issues. And I just wanted to, again, to put a nail in this here, because I'd never heard of the quarter-life crisis, but apparently that's what's happening and triggering all of this anxiety with all of these young women. And if we pivot from there and we go to this other news where it's more than half of Generation Z workers are reporting mental health issues because they're burnt out. Teresa Lusk, tell us more.
Yes, Rich, they are burnt out because there are so many different things that they're dealing with. I mentioned before the break that we maybe saw some different styles of parenting, but another thing that I believe is affecting this younger generation is that if you think about it, they've been taught to research everything. And when they're driven by information, more and more information, more and more. When they can't, and they take it like the gospel, a lot, most of them. I'm not going to say every single one of them, but this generation, they do. If you look at the way
it's
that
on the internet, it's got to be real.
Correct. So what happens is they formulate their foundations for life, their mindset, expectations, et cetera, based on the information that's gone out. And unfortunately, they're not even, people love to say, well, it's science-based, it's research-based. Well, that doesn't always mean it's the best information.
Right.
But so they build this internal expectation of themselves that they've got to do it the way that they have learned through this information. So there's so much pressure besides the things such as social media and such as life and such as now that they may be being a little too protected from too many things. They're not being taught how to handle stress. It's more like, let me protect you from stress versus let me teach you how to deal with it. But also they build in that internal system of, hey, I've got to do life this way. And if it's not looking this way, if my boss isn't dealing with me the way that I read they should be, the way they should be protecting me, taking care of me, et cetera, I think it just creates an internal stress.
Yeah.
And a pressure that, yeah.
I'm just thinking, and one that's, it's like a cycle, right? So it's like every time now I'm just going to keep having these meltdowns and these explosions because I'm incredibly overwhelmed because you're so poorly equipped to deal with like the reality of life. And that's got to come not only just from the parents, but I think wherever they went to school, which is probably public school, that has gotten softer on teaching people to be stronger is, for lack of a better word.
Absolutely. Well, and you're going somewhere with that because that is what we're seeing, that in the schools, in the colleges, universities, we're creating, quote, safe spaces instead of just going, guys, here's some ways to deal with life, but this is life and we can't break down. And I know that may sound insensitive to a lot of people, but the reality is if we don't start equipping this younger generation and the generations to come about how life can be hard and you can't be protected from it always. So what do? Like everybody else, through a hard time, you build an inner strength and hopefully some wisdom when you deal with some wise people in your life that can help you deal with things. Another thing is a lot of these younger people also, this younger generation, there's a lot of things they keep to themselves. There isn't as much sharing. Somebody in my age group, older group, we might be okay with going out and talking to a counselor about things. Some of these younger generation kids, they hold it in for a while. That goes back to some of the suicide rates and ideation. Yeah. Because, it is absolutely.
Let me just remind people, we're on with Teresa Lusk. She is the author of Girl Preach and several other books. Teresa, what do you, as an observer of all of these things, what's your recommendation to everybody that's listening that's like, I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 21-year-old daughter. And I know on many occasions I'm the bad guy because I say things that I acknowledge they're wrong. I don't know how to handle it sometimes, like when they start crying. And I'm like, you're 18. You can't cry anymore. You've got to just do it. You gotta just go to work and just breathe. It's going to be okay. Like I've had so many of these moments, and they just look at me like, you're an ogre, you're a monster, you're so rough. But I just tell them, if not me, who, right? Because somebody else is going to be an ogre and monster and rough with you. And at least I love you. But and I don't know if that's the right approach, but I do know that we need to be better at equipping our children. And, what's your, 30 seconds, what's the best advice you give?
Well, I'm with you, and I get it, and I parented a lot more like you, and I got the same type of response. And the deal is, as much as we would like to train our younger generations how to deal with things the way you and I did, and our older generations, the truth is they have their own language. So we're going to have to kind of meet in the middle. We're going to have to be a little more gentle in our approach, but still real. Still say, hey, this is real life. These are things that really happen. What are some things that you can start doing to work these hard moments out, to deal with the stress? What are some guidelines that you can form for yourself so that when you're feeling so stressed out that you can't handle life, here are the steps you're going to follow. But also you start accepting and understanding that life does look challenging at times, but you make the best of it in this way, that way, et cetera. So we have to kind of meet in the middle with the way that they speak, and then with the reality of our experience, and try to bring it to the table without making them feel less than or picked on, but still keeping it real, Rich. We still have to be real with them.
100%. That's excellent advice. Teresa, that means they're kicking me out when they're playing the music. But I want to invite you back sometime soon, and I want to thank you for being with us tonight. Teresa Lusk.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.